two summits.
Congresswoman Spanberger, I just wonder where we go from here and what our government can do despite this president who was quite distracted during this summit, was tweeting about other things, about Michael Cohen, at one point, dropped demands for full accounting. He's not necessarily a figure that one can count on in terms of predictability, I think is fair to say. So what can the government do to work with this situation despite him?
Well, I think there's some troubling things that we've seen, the lack of preparation, the lack of taking into account reports from our intelligence community. And so from a congressional standpoint, I think it's incredibly important that we being members of Congress, continue to affirm the role of Congress in any offensive military action, affirm the role of Congress related to sanctions and treaties, and work to ensure that we are part of the discussions, because what has been so troubling is that it does look like the president is attempting to pursue diplomacy just based on one-on-one conversations. And as the other guest said, that is absolutely not in the best interest of the United States and certainly doesn't put us in the best position to negotiate.
David Ignatius, I know you have
Great
questions
point.
for our guests. I have a quick one for you, though. Do you expect a showdown between the Pentagon and this president regarding military exercises?
Joe, I think if there is any significant push from the White House to scale back military exercises as a way of making a confidence-building gesture with North Korea, there'll be strong resistance. I've already heard in conversations over the last week at the Pentagon that readiness is declining. They've tried to keep enough of an edge that they feel they'd be ready to fight if they needed to. But if any further pressure, they'll get pushback. I would think that John Bolton, as National Security Advisor, would strongly urge the president not to do that. So I do want to ask Ambassador Hill and Ambassador Burns just to help us think about where this goes next, starting with Ambassador Hill. If you were to sit down with Secretary of State Pompeo and his envoy, Steve Biegun, what would be your list of sort of next steps to try to get this process of negotiation on a better path after the essential failure of this round in Hanoi?
Well, first of all, I would send Biegun and maybe Pompeo himself to Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, and maybe over to Moscow as well. I think we need to get the directly affected parties more involved in this. And the idea that China is going to be content with sort of after-action reports is just completely unrealistic. We have to have an understanding with these other countries. And one of the problems, of course, is that China and Russia have been urging the North Koreans to kind of demand troop withdrawals or certainly stand down of exercises in return for some elements of denuclearization. Look, to do that, to involve exercises, even the peace treaty declaration, is basically to buy into the North Korean notion that they need nuclear weapons because we plan to attack them. And they know that's not the case. They want nuclear weapons to kind of urge us to get off the Korean Peninsula. So I think we have to have a better understanding with the allies. And then with respect to future summitry, I mean, we seem to have one summit a year with NATO and then one summit a year with North Korea. And I think really this is a time for, and others at that kind of level to be trying to work out deals. And again, they shouldn't leave it up to President Trump to negotiate nuclear weapons. There should have been a clear understanding so that President Trump could sit with Kim Jong-un and talk about each other's haircuts rather than nuclear weapons. It should have been agreed ahead of time. To send our president halfway around the world for something that was kind of half-baked, I think is really problematic.
Ambassador Burns, what do you think?
David, we need leverage on our side. We've got a very good negotiator in Steve Biegun. He's smart. The president needs to empower him. And we've got to work with these other countries, Japan, South Korea, China, to build up leverage against North Korea. I think that's the language that Kim Jong-un would understand. It's what's been missing in this, I think, misbegotten bilateral dance between President Trump and Kim.
So I might ask a final question of Congresswoman Spanberger. In this situation, with this round of summitry having led nowhere, there's some arguments that have been made by analysts at the Carnegie Endowment at Stanford University that the U.S. really should focus on the more limited process of reducing the North Korean threat rather than the make-or-break total denuclearization deal. What do you think about that?
Well, I think overall we need to look at what is it that we're trying to focus on. Are we trying to keep our allies safe, keep ourselves safe? Are we trying to ultimately have a productive diplomatic engagement with North Korea? Because for me, one of the biggest problems is it doesn't seem clear what our actual end goal is. And so I think defining it, having the president define it, having our diplomats define it, whether that's made public or not, is incredibly important, because walking into deals and, you know, we're saying that this deal was a failed meeting, but you know, at the Singapore summit, we gave up concessions for nothing in return. So, frankly, from a U.S. government perspective, I am pleased that we did not once again see the United States give something up in return for nothing. But I think that what our larger strategic goal on the Korean Peninsula should be the subject of much larger strategic conversations, and not driven by a friendship that the president is pursuing, or, as the ambassadors have mentioned, the outcome of one bilateral meeting once a year.